Hey guys, today I'm gonna talk about why it is irrational to be against marriage equality regardless of your personal views on homosexuality. However, this is not gonna be a video in favor or against the LGBTQ+ community, since being a part of it is inherently morally neutral. It isn't a good or a bad thing. It is nothing more than another characteristic such as being straight. I'm just going to state the facts as neutral as possible as to why it would be hypocritical to allow straight marriage while excluding gay people, at least through a legal point of view. Which takes me to my first disclaimer. I am not going to be talking about religion or religious arguments as to why, quote unquote, being gay is wrong, because there's enough of a debate around religion being against it or not in the first place, and most of those arguments are not even based in reason to begin with. So, with that out of the way, the definition of rationality that we're going to be using throughout the video is, quote, the quality of being based on or in accordance with reason or logic, end quote. Now we have to define morality, which is, quote, the principles concerning the distinction between right and wrong or good and bad behavior, end quote. I would also have to clarify that morality is totally subjective and it can't define rationality. However, I am going to be using the terms rational morality and irrational morality in order to illustrate my points better. You'll understand why later on, but just keep that in mind for now. I am not going to compare rational and irrational morality as to which one is better or worst, since anyone can live their lives however they want as far as they don't hurt others, and everyone is entitled to their own beliefs, regardless of the rationality behind them. What I am going to do is explain why laws, and in this case laws regarding marriage, should be based in rational morality. As many of you might already know, in most first world countries and the Western world in general, it is very common to find countries that have a separation between church and state. This means that people are free to engage in whatever religion or lack of it they want, but those ideas don't have to be enforced in others that might not share the same belief system. This doesn't mean laws lack moral value in this type of situation, it just means laws are supposed to reflect rational morality. Quote, moral rationalism, also called ethical rationalism, is a view in meta-ethics, especially in the epistemology of ethics, according to which moral principles are knowable a priori by reason alone. End quote. In other words, the standards that it is built upon are rational. They can be deconstructed and explained to another person that might have other moral views, and they would conclude the same thing by following the same rational path regardless of their previous beliefs. I know it's a little tricky concept to get your head around, but don't worry if you haven't already, I am going to illustrate this with two examples. The first example will be about irrational morality. In this case, sex before marriage is wrong. I chose this example because it's a fairly simple one and also very common. There is a lot of people that live their lives through this moral principle, and that is totally respectable. However, it's a moral standard that lacks objective rationality, because people can get married whenever in their adult life, which leaves a lot of room for them to engage in sexual practices before getting married. And as far as the sex is being practiced responsibly, with clear and ongoing consent, and within an appropriate age range, there is no objective reason to consider it wrong or immoral. But, despite this being truth, there are still a lot of people that agree with this statement. That doesn't mean it should be illegal to have sex before marriage though, because people can't force their beliefs on others if they aren't backed up by any logic. Therefore, not relevant enough for a law to be made to prohibit it or make it happen, since it goes both ways. It would also be wrong to force people to practice sex before marriage if they don't want to. Now, the rational morality example. The P word is wrong. This one causes a lot of emotional reactions to say the least, and I totally get why. But beyond the natural disgust that people feel towards this topic, there are actual rational reasons to believe this. A fundamental factor for sex to be legal is consent, and underage people are not cognitively able to provide sexual consent, since there is a lot of scientific evidence that concludes they are literally unable to understand the short and long-term consequences of sexual activity, especially with an adult. This means that in order for something like this to happen, there has to be some kind of a going on. This is why it is rational to have this moral standard regardless of your beliefs, and also why the P word is already illegal in most countries. There are plenty of reasons as to why the P word is objectively wrong, but I think that's enough to take my point across. Maybe I'll do a video about it in the future. But, before I keep going, I should clarify that I am not trying to imply in any way, shape, or form that people who share moral views that aren't precisely rational are unable to be rational themselves, as any human with a functional brain should be able to perform rational thinking. But this, however, doesn't mean that everything that comes out of a human's mouth is inherently rational. Now that you understand a little better what I mean by rational and irrational morality, I am finally going to start talking about marriage equality. First, let's go over the necessary characteristics for any couple, regardless of sexuality or gender identity, to get married. They can't be underage, the union has to be consented by both parties, and they can't be a part of the same legal family tree. Straight people have been allowed to violate all of the above all over the world and still get married. But let's pretend we live in a fairy tale where people are decent. These are all rational moral standards to have. The underage one because of what I already explained about the P word. The consent one because you can't force others to do anything, since that would mean you are taking away their right to perform free will. And finally, the family part, which contrary to popular belief, including me, is not even for genetic reasons, because there is no way that the state can regulate if family members have sex with each other in the privacy of their homes, and eventually reproduce together? And this is why it happens every day. We have this rule because of the legal structures that exist for families, which give people different rights and duties to the eyes of law. This is why step-siblings can't get married either unless they legally change their family status, even if they are 100% genetically compatible. Besides, incest isn't a sexuality, it's a circumstantial thing that happens regardless of sexual identity. It's not like someone is going to break up with their brother and, go date grandpa. After going over all the three basic requirements, you'll notice that the P word is invalid for marriage, incest is invalid for marriage either, and mostly any other philia such as this or that are invalid as well, because they fail to fulfill all the necessary characteristics. But wait, gay people can have consensual relationships outside of their family tree within an appropriate age range. It's almost like there is basically no rational reason that would only apply to gay people without resorting to discrimination in order to prevent them from getting married. If you still don't get it, I'm going to go through a few popular arguments to better illustrate my claim. Gay people can't reproduce with each other, and marriage is about starting a family. There are a lot of things wrong with this statement. The first one being that there are gay couples where one of them is trans. This means that it is possible for them to have biological children with each other, since not all trans people take hormones and not all that do end up sterile. And it would also still count as same-sex marriage if the trans person has already legally changed their gender. Next thing wrong with this argument is that not all straight people are able to reproduce, and some of them don't want to even if they could. And yet, no straight person has ever been denied the right to marry whoever they want because of their reproductive plans. This argument is also forgetting about adoption. Are adoptive parents not real parents? I'd say they are without a doubt, whether they are straight, gay, or single. So, gay people are definitely capable of being parents, and that's without considering bisexual people who already have biological children and then end up marrying a same-sex partner. There are just so many possibilities that this argument falls flat. It is clear that reproduction is not a fundamental requirement for straight people to get married, and even if it was, gay people could still meet the criteria for it. If a gay couple starts a family by adopting, the child is going to get bullied and everyone deserves a mom and a dad figure. While I can kind of get behind the everyone deserves to at least know who their biological parents are part of this argument, it is a very weak one as well. First of all, the bullying that a kid might go through at school is not the kid's fault or their families. The one that should be fixed and given a better education is the bully, and I am not even implying that all kids should be taught to accept gay people, even though I personally think that would be ideal. Everyone is entitled to raise their kid however they want, even if that means not liking gay people. But not teaching them to respect others even if they don't agree with them is just straight up bad parenting. And going back to the mom and dad thing, go tell that to the heavily overcrowded foster systems over the world. I think most people who currently live or lived in one of those are going to agree with me that it is way better to have two moms or two dads than sit and rot in an orphanage until you turn 18. Besides, it's not like gay people are taking them away from their parents in the first place. These kids had nobody to begin with. That's how adoption works. I think we've gotten to a point into the video where the only thing left to talk about is discrimination. The definition for this term is, quote, the unjust or prejudicial treatment of different categories of people or things, especially on the grounds of race, age, or sex, end quote. This means that not letting gay people get married even if they meet all the characteristics necessary for straight people to do the exact same thing, it would literally fall directly into discrimination, by definition. So, regardless of your opinion on homosexuality, which you are totally entitled to as an individual, if you claim to be a person that cares about freedom and justice, you shouldn't be against marriage equality, because if you are, that would be inherently contradictory to the definition of freedom. Quote, the power or right to act, speak, or think as one wants without hindrance or restraint, end quote. And don't even try to make the argument of, where is my freedom to disagree? Because, first of all, nobody told you can't disagree. I'm just saying it would be irrational and discriminatory since you're okay with straight people doing the same. And it is also quite dense asking for the freedom to take others' freedom away? Yeah, that makes no sense whatsoever. You aren't free to go against freedom because if you were, freedom was never a thing in the first place. Nobody is forcing anyone to get into a homosexual relationship. The point is to give that option to the ones who are interested. Anyways, that would be all for today's video. Remember to hit the like button and subscribe if you liked it, dislike if you didn't, and be kind to everyone in the comment section. Bye. Missing someone.